Welcome back, everybody, to the Denver Dzogchen podcast. I'm here again, once again, with Joseph Wagner. And today, recommendation coming from one of our listeners is to talk about this teacher-student relationship. This can be an incredibly complex and vast subject, particularly in the Vajrayana, where the guru is a very important, central part of how we practice and how we approach it. So I'm looking forward to getting Joe's thoughts and advice about how all of this can work for us, and how we can really navigate it in this modern world, kind of so separated from where this stuff comes from.
Yeah. Hi, Damien, and hello, everyone. It's kind of it's not only a big topic, but a complex topic, and maybe we'll try to make it as positive as possible, but there's some aspects to it that it's different than from when I got started as a Dharma practitioner. So when I look at the difficulty of connecting in an independent and face-to-face, one-on-one way with an accomplished teacher these days, it's harder. It's harder than it used to be. So some part of it might sound negative, but we have a hopefully a way of working around that. So um, when I think about this, I mean, the Vajrayana is all about your guru, right? I mean, there's different relationships with your teacher depending on the vehicles, right? I mean, in most of the vehicles, you have a relationship more like a spiritual guide or a Kalyana Mitra. You're not really worshiping or prostrating to them as the Buddha. That's only in the Vajrayana. Even if your teacher's an amazing, amazing Zen master or whatever. I came from the Zen tradition, and in the Zen tradition, you meet some amazing people. I mean, Wei-Jue Fosher, who I studied a little bit with in Taiwan, was like an enlightened Buddha, as far as I can tell. Shengyen Fosher is my first Buddhist teacher, and those guys are amazing. But you don't see them in the same way. You don't frame the relationship in the same way as you do in the Vajrayana, where the teacher is the Buddha, the teacher is the Dharma, the teacher is the Sangha. And that's a little different in this style. So we'll talk about, how to relate, I guess, and how to find a teacher and what to do when you found one. Like what are you supposed to do next, I guess. How did you find your first teacher?
Well, my first teacher was when I decided that I was going to practice Tibetan Buddhism. And so back in the early days of the internet, I just went to it and said Tibetan Buddhism, Seattle, and Sakya Monastery came up. And so I went there and took refuge with Dzogchen Rinpoche right away and received empowerment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Lucky you.
So it all started like that. And then shortly after I met Keelan Rinpoche, and I got to know him very close and in personal way. And he's guided me now for 20 years personally. So as you said, that sort of thing is hard to find anymore. It does exist, but it is difficult to find. But the way that I understand Guru Yoga, the most important thing is that it's a skillful means, right?
Mhm.
Like everything in Buddhism, except for the nature of mind itself, Buddha nature itself, is just a method, right? Even the most highest, loftiest, most magnificent tantric methods are methods. They're skillful means, they're boats. I studied Buddhism in college some, and one of the first metaphors that the Buddha taught that struck me so strongly was that the Dharma is a boat you use to cross to the other shore, and once you get to the other shore, you don't carry it on your head, right? So recognizing that these are methods, these are tools, so we don't have to get too heavy-handed about them. We can recognize them as something that we can use in our path to help us. And if they're not helping us, then we need to change our relationship to the tool or change the tool we're using, right? And I think that that's a great way to start looking at the guru concept.
Very well said. Yeah, that's very good. I think that we can go when you're getting involved in this, you do need a teacher. I know people who are like, yeah, my teacher is like Trump Rinpoche. And I'm like, oh, did you have a lot of close contact? No, I never met him, but he's my guru. Okay, fine. And I get that. I feel like my teacher in part is the Dalai Lama, but I've never met him. And so I get that. But it is good to have a human teacher, even if the teacher is not someone you can see as a Buddha like you were supposed to in the Vajrayana. You need a human who can relate to you. They don't have to be super enlightened, right? That's not necessary. They just have to know more than you, and that relationship's called like Kalyana Mitra, like a spiritual friend.
Yeah.
But before we even talk about that, The number one thing to remember is what the Buddha said. What did he say? He said, be a lamp unto yourself. And that is what is most important. Because as Damien just pointed out in a beautiful way, even the teacher-student relationship is a method. It is not absolutely necessary, right? It is not 100%. You can't do it if you don't have a teacher. That isn't true. There's so much material out there. You can start a meditation practice today based on what you find on YouTube, based on what you find at the library. There's so much material out there that you can learn how to take refuge, you can learn how to sit, you can do all that stuff, and you can make real progress without having any human teacher. But I still think it's good to have one. But the main thing is we got to be a lamp unto ourselves, especially now. When I got started in the Vajrayana, that was 1993. I had already been practicing Buddhism for maybe 5 years. I had a Korean teacher. I had a Western person I was relating to as my teacher, and then I had a Chinese teacher in Taiwan. I was not even interested in Vajrayana, as I've told this story many times. It was the power of Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche when I saw him that did it. I just went in there and I asked a question that had nothing to do with being my teacher, and he blew my mind, just his presence. And from then I was like, I'll do whatever you say. Just tell me what to do. And I got lucky that at that time there weren't that many people interested. You could have a private relationship. I got to go back and see him a couple times and get some teachings and empowerments, but that is super rare. And that isn't going to be possible for most people. You're interested in Tulku Urgyen, so you look up his son, and who do you find? You find Dzogchen Rinpoche. And Dzogchen Rinpoche's got a couple of books on the bestseller list, and when you try to sign up for his retreat, you can't even go because you have to be there right at the moment, like a concert, to be able to go. And when you go, you can't even see him because he doesn't see people privately. So it can be very difficult to have what we think of as like a traditional relationship. So, what I recommend is you gotta take part of your mind off and have that act as your guide in this. You have to be like, okay, so what do I do until I meet that person who's going to blow my mind or take me under their wing or whatever? And and you can do all kinds of stuff. You can go to retreats, whether it's with a teacher like Keeling Rinpoche, who's still available. You could still have the relationship that Damien has with Keeling Rinpoche right now. He's a Longchen and Tick lineage holder. He lives outside of Seattle. And if you feel a connection to him, you could make that connection. Anyan Rinpoche in town here, Choje Rinpoche in Denver. Those guys are like, they're not as famous. If you choose someone like the Dalai Lama or Chokin Ima, I mean, maybe, but it's going to be tough. So you got to be a little bit judicious with who you want to connect with, right? And then hopefully you'll be able to make that connection. So before I go any further, I want to say, if you do want to meet a teacher, the one thing I've found to be the most powerful is making daily aspirations that you can meet your karmically destined Lama, your karmically connected teacher. And all that is required to do that is you've got your session, you do all your stuff, and at the end of your session, when you dedicate the merit, then you make prayers, aspirations. And the aspiration is, may I meet my karmically destined Lama who can guide me on the path. May I meet that person, may I have the merit and the connection to be able to receive teachings and feel faith. That's all you have to do. You do that enough, and things will start to align. The world will start to align. This has been my experience over and over and over. I can even tell a story about it later. But Damien, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, well, the way I look at it is I have different kinds of teachers, right? Like I've received teachings from like Sakya Tritsen and some of these high lamas, Garchen Rinpoche, and maybe get a chance to meet them and receive an empowerment or whatever. But in general, they're kind of like preceptors, right? Like they have a lot of power. They're really amazing lamas. And so the empowerments that I've received from them, I hold very dear. Like it's a special, important ritual, but they're not really like part of my path and they don't know me, right? Like they don't know my name. They wouldn't recognize me. And then I have like a layer down, like Keeling Rinpoche and Katak Rigzin Chenpo Rinpoche. These are lamas who know me, who've given me teachings and empowerments that I feel blessed. And they also, I can have interviews with them once or twice or three times a year, and some kind of connection. And then I have teachers like Joe, who I talk to all the time, and have, guidance with and bounce ideas off of and get to speak with more casually. I see all of those as really important. The ones that are really, really high up, they're easier to see as Buddhas, right? Like
Yeah.
they're just the Buddha. I don't have to like be around them while they're doing ordinary activities, and I can easily lose my faith in them. So it's really nice. You can see Garchen Rinpoche as a straight Buddha because you just never see him make an error, and he just seems magnificent, and it's just and that's really good for your faith and practice to have somebody like that. And it's actually helpful that you're not so close, right? Because it'll helps you preserve that faith. Then it's good to have a Lama who's part of the lineage who you could get some advice from about the practices you're receiving and a little bit of guidance if you kind of have difficulty, somebody who knows you personally, because there's a certain like energy thing that happens in that relationship that I think is like really vital. And then having somebody, often a Western person, who understands your culture and language and isn't like Tibetan and isn't disconnected, who can kind of give you guidance and help you like navigate all of this stuff in your day-to-day animal. All of those things I think is like super helpful and important to have, and totally possible to get, like it's not out of the range of possibilities.
Definitely. For everyone who's hearing this, the first and the bottom are definitely possible. All you have to do is be willing to travel. Garchen Rinpoche is alive. He lives in Arizona. He is Buddha. The Dalai Lama comes and gives teachings. I don't know how much he's traveling now, but Lord Karmapa, these guys are huge. And you might not be able to have a personal relationship, but you can connect with that, what it looks like at the end of the path. Uh, that is definitely possible. You just have to avail yourself of a plane ticket, and maybe you have to go to India, but maybe not. Maybe you can just go to Brooklyn. You never know. There's lots of lamas out there. And in that category, like the Tsoknyi Rinpoches and the Mingyur Rinpoches, these guys are amazing. It's very tough to see them privately and have like a personal conversation and to get them to connect with you. Now, I will give a piece of a secret oral instruction, maybe, if you do. Now, I've been very, very lucky with meeting a lot of lamas. I had good relationship with Tulku Urgyen. I spent a lot of time in Tibet, all this kind of stuff. I just been lucky. If you have the opportunity to have a one-on-one with someone like His Holiness Sakya and I'm talking about the old one or the new one, but the old guy's like really amazing, some kind of thing, then you got to do the following. You got to say, Rinpoche, please accept me as your disciple. And if they say, okay, even if they never see you again, you got this energetic link with a real Buddha. And that is, I feel that so strongly with so many of my teachers, even ones I didn't have the opportunity to study deeply with. I did do that with Sakya and I did do that with Lama Norsuk. I was closer to Tulku Urgyen and those guys, but take that opportunity. Don't waste that chance. If you get an interview with Adzam Palo or one of these hotshots, you don't have to be like, "Hey, will you come over to my house and have a cookout?" You can just say, "Please accept me as your disciple." And if they say yes, you made a connection. And that connection is, as long as your faith is intact, it's unbreakable. So that's like someone told me that years ago, and it works. I always do it whenever I get a chance. Whenever I get a chance with one of these dramas.
The second part to that is, what is your instruction for me? Right. The other thing to ask is, instead of, sometimes, I mean, you can ask personal question or a specific question, but sometimes more helpful to say, what is your instruction for me? And then just leave it open, because I've done this with lamas and it tends to stay with you for the rest of your life.
That is very good. And I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't say that. Yeah, if they do say, like, if you get that chance to ask, say, what is your personal advice for me? That's all you have to say. What should I do next? Or how should I proceed? I've had many very powerful experiences with asking that exact question. Maybe most powerful with Adi Rinpoche, who's a teacher of Tsoknyi Rinpoche and you know, he was in prison with Garshan Rinpoche, like he's an enlightened Buddha. And the last one of the times I saw him in Tibet, we were finishing up, and I just said that exact thing. I said, Rinpoche, I mean, there were a couple people there. I wasn't alone, but I was kind of leading him. And I said, Rinpoche, what is your advice for me? And he was like, he got so psyched and he gave a whole bunch of advice. People started crying. I started crying. I heard someone who was not connected with our group. There were a couple people, students of Dzogchen Rinpoche. Dzogchen Rinpoche was acting as our translator. It was very funny. But anyway, one of the students was like, "Who are these guys?" That was what he said. It was like that is a really good advice. Just then the Lama will say whatever. And if in these super advanced masters, they see you. They don't need to know like where you went to college. They see you, and they can sometimes give you something that literally you can take with you and use for the rest of your life. That's like the highest level. I just want to throw that out because once in a while you do get a chance. I know a guy who got some teachings from the Dalai Lama. Just he was leaving a hall and the guy was like, I gotta see you. And he was like, come tonight. And then he just went and had time with the Dalai Lama. So these things are possible. So take the chance when you get there, really bond. That's very good. Good.
So maybe we can say a little bit more about now. Now you've done all these things, which I think are crucial. Yeah, you need to have empowerments. You need to connect to a real Lama for real, and you need to probably have a Kalyana Mitra, somebody you can talk to somewhat regularly, maybe preferably a Western person who's been on the path for a longer than you,
Mhm.
who can really like help you negotiate this thing. That I think those are really, really helpful things. And part of like what Denver Dzogchen and all that's about is like it's a collective of practitioners, and some are very senior and some are very new, and we can help each other out, right? So that's a
Yeah, yeah.
big part of it. But that aside, now we have this inner group.
Hmm.
How do we connect
Oh.
to that, and what does that mean?
Well, before we talk about that, let's talk about that middle level, like a real
Mhm.
teacher, someone for you like Keelan Rinpoche. I don't know your relationship, but he's guiding you and he's a master, so he knows. Everyone should try to have this relationship. Usually, it's just hard to do it with the really famous ones. So you have to be kind of like, you got to make a lot of aspirations and you've got to do what they say. When you meet one of those lamas, like let's use Keelan Rinpoche, if he says, oh yeah, it'd be good if you came to such and such an event we're gonna have. You better freaking go. When you
Yeah.
go, they watch and they see you and they're like, oh, I said you should come, and then he came. And like, Rinpoche, I came. What should I do next? You do a
Yeah.
couple of those, and then they make the link too, and then you
Yeah.
can have a relationship like you are very blessed to have with Riggs and Chenpo Rinpoche. That guy's amazing, and he has almost no Western students. And he is thinking about you. When he thinks like Western students, well, I got that bald guy in Seattle. I know he's doing what I say, right? Because when you go the next time, you say, Rinpoche, you told me to do some Tara. I've done Tara. I did 2 million Tara mantras, whatever. They're like, oh, okay. Well, let's see. And then you kind of not exactly impress them, but you show that you're serious. And then you
Yeah.
can build that middle relationship. I just didn't want to, leave that out. You got the highest lamas only can usually get like an empowerment at best or teachings when they're traveling, whatever. You got this middle grade lama, not middle grade, but central kind of lama who's like guiding your path on an individual basis. Maybe you see him once a year, maybe you see him once a month, who knows? Maybe you only see him once every 5 years, but they know you and they're working with you. And then you've
Yeah.
got any kind of Kalyana Mitra, someone who knows more than you. I got
Yeah.
people like that, and when I have questions, I write them. David Christensen's a friend of mine. He's a great translator. He did a lot of retreat. If I have questions, I can be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And he can give me that. He's like my elder brother in the Dharma. So we do
Yeah.
that, right? So, but then what you're talking about is like a whole nother thing, the so-called inner guru. This is like really the center part of the path, right? This is the most important thing. And when
Yeah.
we, Mhm, please.
Recognizing over time that these outer gurus are your inner guru.
Mm,
That's a big part of it too. So we're like bringing these two together
yes.
so that we start to like connect to both in that same way.
Yeah. Ultimately, no matter, even if you're someone like Eric Pimakunsong or Andreas Kreshmar, who lived with Tulku Urgyen for years, they lived in the same little retreat place. They saw him every day for years. What happened? Tulku Urgyen passed away, right? He did die. And those guys had to fend for themselves on some level, you know? And it's the same with us, right? I was also a student of Tulku Urgyen and he died. So what am I really able to rely on? Not the external manifestation of the guru. If you get a chance and you can study with someone like that, of course, it's wonderful. And you should bind them to yourself with hoops of steel, like freaking Hamlet says. But whether or not that's possible, the ultimate Lama is your own awareness. And that is what we are getting the teachings for, is to recognize that part of us, which is also shining out of the Lama, and to become more and more clear about what's our ideas and our ego and our confusion and all that stuff, and what is the actual essence, the thing that the Buddha discovered that he said I also have. What is that really about? And that's what the path is really about. It's not about doing rituals. It's not about going on trips. It's not about having a cool shrine, although all those things are fun and good, or wearing Lama robes or getting secret teachings. All that stuff is very interesting and can be helpful and can be beautiful, but is certainly not the point. There's only one point, and that's to recognize, who am I? Who am I really? What is the nature of me, of my mind? We could call it Rigpa, we can call it Sukadagarba, whatever, but we better figure that out. And that whole process is the discovery of the inner guru.
Yeah. Well, and this connection between the two, like one of the easiest ones, for me, I have Keeling Rinpoche the same way. Like if I have a question come to my mind, I already know what he'll say. I don't have to ask him questions anymore because I know exactly his answer to almost any question I can think of. And if I don't know it, it'll come to me.
He is your inner guru.
Exactly. But also this works really well for Garchen Rinpoche because he has like 100 hours of teachings online. So I guarantee, which I've done, watched many hours of his teachings. You start to know, and you can ask Garchen Rinpoche a question and you'll get your answer. Like, what he would say, right? Because these lamas, they have, and why do you get to know that? Because they are your true nature and you're tapped into that. And you, by connecting to them, it kind of helps facilitate that inner knowledge that you already have, and gives it kind of a little bit of a flavor and a form so that you can trust it a little.
Beautiful. You're absolutely right. Garchen Rinpoche, we can't talk enough about him. He's in America, he's alive, and he has been so generous. All these empowerments, all these teachings recorded. There are hundreds of hours of stuff. Our friend David Newman is now organizing I remember what they're calling it, I think the archive project, which will archive all of Garchen Rinpoche's teachings, ones he gave in Europe, everywhere. They're going to transcribe that stuff. They're going to have notes about what he talks about at different parts of the video. That's all happening. Thank you, David Newman, for that. And he's just someone who, he's always the same. He's exactly the same. You watch, he's got maybe 10 or 15 different question and answer things on there. And you watch that. And after you watch some of those, you know, just like Damien said, if you have a question like, hey, how should I handle this? You almost don't even have to finish asking. You're like, I know what he would say. Love your enemies or whatever, and we have that as a real resource. Everybody hearing this can go right now, YouTube, and watch Garchen Rinpoche give empowerments, watch him be amazing, be like a living Buddha, and still alive right here. You can actually go to Arizona and meet him, or at least see him. I don't know if he's seeing people individually, but you can certainly see him in a little group with a couple other people. Wow. I encourage people to do that. The more you do that, the more it awakens your own bodhicitta, which is that aspect of you that's already enlightened or whatever, already awake. And that's what the whole Dharma is about. The whole Dharma is about living from there and not living from our ordinary ego and confused ideas about stuff.
Yeah, and there's some controversy because Garchen Rinpoche lets people take empowerments and transmissions through recordings. But the reason he says that is because the only empowerment you ever receive is always from your true nature. It's not from another person, right? And yes, it's important to make the link. And part of what happens, I think, because Garchen Rinpoche is so pure, that you can watch him on a screen, even though it's not happening at the moment, and he is just right overlaid over your true nature. And you just receive the empowerment from your true nature directly. I have faith, in him. That he says that you can do that, so you can do that. That's how I feel. But like, it's still really good to make a real connection with a living Lama that, if you can. But just everybody that has YouTube, you can go get teachings, empowerments, etc., from one of the greatest living masters ever.
Exactly. I just to riff off of what you just said, it is important to have someone who can keep you in line. Many of us have this, it's easy for the ego to get mixed up with your meditation, and all of a sudden you think, I'm a Tibetan. I'm enlightened, I'm able to guide others. This kind of energy, very common. So you really need someone like your relationship with your teachers who can keep you in line. If you don't have that, it is possible to go astray. So really, you should try to have all three of those, right? Get teachings from the greats, have a relationship with a Lama who's a real lineage holder. Usually they're Tibetans, but there are a few Westerners. Lama Lena is really amazing. She's like someone you could actually meet. She was a student of Lama Wangdor, and I think I have some faith in her. And then having somebody in your community, in your Sangha, who you feel you can learn from is always beneficial. And all three of those people, or at least the bottom two, they can help keep you in line. Because I know a lot of people who are like, check out this thing I wrote. And you're like, what are you doing here? Like, what's your motivation? Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's like, so we want to keep ourselves in line. And sometimes our pure vision of ourself can kind of overwhelm the actual truth, and we sort of like, you see these people like, and this is very dangerous. So you want to be a little careful. Good to have physical teachers. I think it's important.
And to link to the lineage, right? Like this living lineage transmission, it's freaking amazing. Keeling Rinpoche is the Tulku of one of Jigme Lingpa's four heart sons, and and as a heart son himself of the fourth Dzogchen Rinpoche, etc. So these teachings, it's so cool to know these are directly coming from Longchenpa and Jigme Lingpa, mouth to ear, all the way to me. There's nothing quite like that magic, and it really has magic.
Real Vajrayana, and we should all shoot for having that. We're like pumping up Keelan Rinpoche. His email box is going to explode. But yeah, there are real teachers still out there, and you want to try to connect with them. And the way I personally think, you also want to connect with the ones you have a karmic link with. So making the aspiration, may I meet my Terapleki Lama, my karmically destined teacher. That has real effects. Then you got to, of course, be open, right, and see how it's going to happen. But certainly all of us can do it. And final plug for Garchen Rinpoche. I was not close to, but I knew Adi Rinpoche, who was in prison with Garchen Rinpoche. And I knew Tulku Urgyen, who was a childhood friend of all those guys. They're all from Nongchen, same area of Tibet. Garchen Rinpoche is amazing. He is amazing, a true Buddha. Any practitioner who doesn't relate to him is, I think, making a major mistake. He is right there. He's in America. He's alive. Yeah. So watching his stuff, when he does live things, trying to get on there, it is the smartest thing you can do. You can feel it. You can feel the blessings like heat coming through the freaking computer screen. It's amazing. He's amazing.
And we're not going to likely have him in the body much longer.
No, so it's good time.
Very old. So
time is now.
We need to, if you get a chance, do it. Do any connection you can have now, do it. Whether it's a live stream or in person or whatever. But make the connection, have faith. He's an incredible teacher. And like I said, I also, second plug for Denver Dzogchen or groups like it. Having a community that you can touch in and actually talk about your path on a regular basis it doesn't compare. You can't, going to go practice with your Lama or whatever isn't the same as this. Having other Western students and other people who are trotting along with you, who can relate to you, who, might listen to Led Zeppelin or, have some kind of relationship to the zeitgeist you're in, which sometimes the Tibetans, they can feel like a totally different universe. It really is helpful to have that also. right? So that you can really have that related
I think
connection.
so. Yeah. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
can make aspirations about that too. May I connect with the Sangha that's going to support me, where I
Yeah.
feel welcome.
Or create a group, like a meditation group online or whatever, find one, join ours, whatever floats your boat, find a way to have regular connection because Sangha, like you might share this quote right now from the Buddha about the importance of spiritual companions. But
Yeah, we were just talking about this. First of all, you got to have Buddha, you got to have Dharma, you got to have Sangha, right? You can't have not have one. And secondly, was it Subhuti who was saying like he got all inspired talking to the Buddha, and he said, Lord, having spiritual friends is half the path. And the Buddha said, don't say that. Spiritual friends are the whole of the path. That's like about Sangha, and we got to have that. We'll have a podcast about Sangha sometime. That's good to do. Yeah.
yeah, just being like able to WhatsApp Joe once a week or twice a week and connect like this keeps me
Twice
because
a
I'm
day.
isolated, right? Like I don't have any friends. I really don't. So
He's exaggerating. You do have friends, but I know what you mean. It is
yeah,
nice to have a connection. Yeah. So yeah.
having Dharma companions, right? It is because it's so hard to do it. Even in Tibet, they have this saying, only the snow lions among us can do this alone.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very, very true. We have this inner guru and we do need to rely on it, but we need community. Humans are such social creatures.
Yeah.
We really are so influenced by our relationships of all
So
kinds.
right. So true.
Well, once again, thank you for watching. Thank you, Joe, for discussing this with us and helping us do this podcast. And thank you, as always, to Ricky, who works behind the scenes to get these released and all of that. And a few weeks ago, you may have seen that we had an episode where we kind of introduced Eric Drew, who's a good friend and mentor of Joe's, and he riffed on some fun things, and you may have caught what kind of magic might come out of Eric. So we're hoping to get him on the podcast one of these days, so you can look forward to that in the near future, hopefully, make aspirations. And other than that, we will see you in 2 weeks.
Ooh, thank you.